One of music's most mercurial heroes wrote lyrics for a progressive rock masterpiece that was inspired by a tranquilizer shot backstage, big enough for an elephant, to provide relief from painful stomach cramps brought on by a serious virus the artist didn't even know he had. The compelling story of an all-time classic, next on Professor of Rock. Hey music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. Listen, if music runs through your veins, if it matters in your life, subscribe below so you never miss an episode of our daily features celebrating the best of the rock and roll era, history straight from the artist, and check out our Patreon link to be a part of curating this great history. You know, how do you define Pink Floyd's landmark album, The Wall? I shudder at the thought of using a manufacturer's label and describe The Wall as simply a double LP. I mean, a more accurate elucidation would be to call the conceptual masterpiece the aftermath of a perfect storm created by a collision of two geniuses and two giant egos. The hurricane of Roger Waters clashing against the cyclone of David Gilmour. These two forces, they just roared to their peak intensity during the making of the grand saga from The Wall, titled Comfortably Numb. Like most of the tracks on The Wall, Comfortably Numb is scrolled from the life of Roger Waters, who wrote the song's lyrics because the song is largely autobiographical. Comfortably Numb deeply connected with listeners really from the outset. Roger Waters' introspection evokes personal interpretation that relate to our own lives considerably. To many, Comfortably Numb brings back painful memories of their childhood, while others have found solace in the lyrics to help them with bouts of depression or mourning the loss of a loved one. I can say unequivocally that Comfortably Numb has been a song for me when I've been in the darkest recesses of despair. More on that later. David Gilmour believes Comfortably Numb can be divided into two parts, the dark section and the light section. Comfortably Numb begins in the dark with Roger Waters singing Hello. Is there anybody in there?
Hello, is there anybody in there?
While the light is undraped in the second verse with Gilmour singing There is no pain, you are receding. The lyrics convey how Roger Waters felt as a child when he was sick with a fever. Hence, when I was a child, I had a fever. My hands felt just like two balloons.
My hands felt just like two balloons.
That line is Roger recounting the time when a flu-like illness shot his body temperature to 105 and brought on a state of delirium to the lad. When Roger became an adult, he experienced that delirious feeling once again and became detached from reality. In an interview with the legendary Los Angeles FM radio personality Jim Ladd, Roger Waters disclosed that part of Comfortably Numb is a narration of when Roger was suffering excruciating stomach cramps prior to a Pink Floyd concert in Philadelphia in 1977. The pain was so debilitating that Waters thought that he'd be unable to perform. So a doctor was summoned to treat him backstage and to relieve the pain. Administered a muscle relaxer that Roger said could have taken down an elephant. Waters did the entire show unable to raise his right hand above his knee because the shot rendered him completely numb. He couldn't control his body. The audience, though, was none the wiser, but when they were begging for more at the end of the show, Roger was unable to return to the stage for the encore with the rest of the band. Roger's pre-show encounter with Dr. Feelgood in the band's dressing room is shared in verse 3 of Comfortably Numb. You know, the part, okay, okay, just a little pinprick. There'll be no more.
There'll be no more.
Love that part, but you may feel a little sick. Can you stand up? I do believe it's working good. That'll keep you going through the show. Come on, it's time to go.
Through the show. Come on, it's time to go.
While the lyrics are from Waters' own experience, it's a part of the overall Floydian manner, if you will, touching strongly on the ghost of Syd Barrett, precisely on his withdrawal prior to July 1967's International Love-In at Alexander Palace, even down to the voice calling, "Time to go" at the knocking door. But the aura of mystery, the not quite as it seems, is pure post-Barrett Floyd. As we go into the history of how the band created this masterpiece, I do want to thank our sponsor, Zenni Eyewear, the glasses I fashion on the daily. At Zenni.com, you can design your own frames and then do a virtual try-on where you can see how the eyewear is going to look on you. Make sure that it matches your face with Zenni's virtual mirror feature. It's really cool. Go try it today at Zenni.com. Now, the Philadelphia story was also an impetus for the overriding theme of the wall, with the wall, of course, symbolizing alienation between the band and the audience. Roger thought the stomach pains were brought on by some sort of food poisoning, but he would soon find out the culprit was much more serious when he was diagnosed with a type of hepatitis, which is an acute virus that inflames tissues surrounding the liver. You know, one of the coolest production touches on the recording of Comfortably Numb is the subtle chime after Roger Waters sings "Just a Little Pinprick." Just a little pinprick. I love that. The chime effect was actually produced by a soft pecking on a key of a xylophone. Nowadays, the chiming ring on Comfortably Numb kind of sounds more like a cell phone alert. But the music track for Comfortably Numb, it actually came from a demo that David Gilmour recorded for a solo record in 1978. He created the essence of the song's melodic structure by rhythmically humming the feel of the track over a high-strung guitar. This set up, though, a series of huge arguments as Gilmour presented Waters and producer Bob Ezrin with the leftover song. As Bob Ezrin explained, Roger Waters was reluctant to using it as The Wall was Roger's record about Roger for Roger. Ezrin hesitated as the existing song needed some filling out, so Roger went away and begrudgingly wrote what started out as a spoken word verse and additional lyrics for the chorus. Ezrin would remember that what Waters brought back gave him goosebumps. The working title for the raw track at that point was The Doctor. Come on, I know you're hiding. Now, when they went to LA to record it, there were two versions. As many of you probably know, there was a stripped down and a heavier one with very little of Michael Kamen's orchestral arrangements. The second version was what Ezrin described as the grander, Technicolor orchestral version. David Gilmour wanted the harder arrangement, of course, while Rodgers and Ezrin wanted the widescreen orchestral version, so that was quite a battle, as Ezrin would recall. I guess they all sat down at an Italian restaurant to hammer out a compromise, only to turn into a massive argument. The relationship between Roger Waters and David Gilmour at this point was already strained and tenuous at best, so this was the biggest battle of the album, as I understand it. At that moment, it was Waters and Ezrin versus Gilmour. Yeah, Bob Ezrin sided with Roger's stand, but truth be told, he had little or no power to combat Gilmour or any of the Pink Floyd band members, really. Ezrin's poor punctuality and erratic behavior during the sessions brought on the wrath of Roger Waters, despite his support of Roger's artistic vision for Comfortably Numb. After the heated exchange, though, they actually struck a deal. The body of the song would feature the orchestral arrangement. The outro, including the final blazing guitar solo, would be taken from the harder version. Bob Ezrin summed up the great compromise perfectly when he said, and I quote, "Comfortably Numb still makes me think of being in bed with a comforter pulled up around your ears and a pillow over your head, saying, 'Leave me alone, I want to be alone in this cocoon.' And then at the end, Dave breaks out and declares himself, and a whole measure of beauty and anger has to be expressed." It was definitely the right approach. The contrast between Waters' orchestral structure and David Gilmour's searing outro transformed the song into one of rock's enduring epics. I mean, the rich harmonies, the gliding 4/4 pace, the vocals from both Waters and Gilmour just make it a perfect combination. Comfortably Numb works both thematically and artistically. With Roger's Bob Dylan-like lyric and delivery,
That you may feel a little sick. Now can you stand up?
and then Gilmour emotes his parts with deeply affecting regret, along with two of the most seismic and flashy anthemic guitar solos in the history of the Big Bang of rock and roll. In the aftermath of the great Waters-Gilmour debate, the transition between the two sections seems so perfect. I mean, it's hard to imagine there was any doubt to begin with. To achieve the distinctive tone on that solo, though, David Gilmour used a heavy pick on his Fender Strat with maple neck through a Big Muff fuzz box and delay effects. David chose the solo he liked best out of the 5 or 6 versions that he recorded for the I Have Become Comfortably Numb chorus. Gilmour and session player Lee Rittenauer used a pair of acoustic guitars strung similarly to a technique called Nashville tuning, but with the low E string replaced with a high E string, 2 octaves higher than standard tuning. Michael Kamen, the great Michael Kamen, who had previously worked with David Bowie, was booked to oversee the orchestral arrangements. I mentioned him earlier. Again, the orchestral arrangements for Comfortably Numb. It was actually performed by musicians from the New York Philharmonic and New York Symphony Orchestras. He also enlisted a choir from the New York City Opera. Those sessions were recorded at CBS Studios in New York without the members of Pink Floyd present. Kamen eventually met the band once the recording was complete, though. Roger Waters was very complimentary of Kamen's work, of course, and he was especially impressed with how he wrote the charts for the song's orchestral movements. While it was one of the artistic high points for Pink Floyd, the recording of Comfortably Numb marked really the beginning of the end for Pink Floyd as that unit with the classic core lineup. By the time of the group's next album, 1983's The Final Cut, Waters had assumed control, with Gilmour effectively relegated to the role of a session man. Waters would fold the band the following year, but David Gilmour resurrected Floyd without Waters in the late 80s, as you all know, much to the angry dismay of his former writing partner, who believed it was unthinkable for Pink Floyd to carry on without him. Comfortably Numb was released as the 3rd single from The Wall, but it didn't chart. The lead single, Another Brick in the Wall, Part 2, was a surprise smash, went all the way to #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and all over the rest of the world in late 79, early 80. Run Like Hell was the 2nd single, and it stalled at number 53. Comfortably Numb, it was really too good for the Billboard charts, and really Pink Floyd was never intended to be a singles-driven band. Always the album was what mattered. The radio success of Another Brick in the Wall was really an anomaly. Comfortably Numb was and still is an elite cornerstone of album rock. Thankfully, the format plays the entire 6 minutes and 21 seconds of the song's magnificence. During the Wall tour in 1980 and 81, Pink Floyd invented some spectacular onstage showmanship during their performances of Comfortably Numb. A giant wall was constructed across the stage, and when Comfortably Numb was performed, Roger Waters was dressed as a doctor positioned at the bottom of the wall, while David Gilmour was at the top of the wall on a raised platform with spotlights shining behind him.
There is no pain you are receiving.
It was the first time the audience's attention was drawn to the top of the completed wall during the concert. Roger sang his part while David waited to sing his part of the song in complete darkness. When Waters was finished, the spotlights behind Gilmour came on for his performance on top of the wall.
When I was a child, I had a fever.
Gilmour called that portion of the Wall concert set a fantastic moment. After leaving Pink Floyd, Waters first performed Comfortably Numb at the 1990 concert staging of The Wall, live in Berlin on July 21st, 1990. The purpose of the event was to commemorate the fall of the Berlin Wall. It was one of those moments where music and history came together. Waters sang lead, Van Morrison sang Gilmour's vocal parts backed by Rick Danko and Levon Helm. of course, of the band with guitar solos by Rick DeFonso and Snowy White. The backup symphony and vocals were performed by the Run Funk Orchestra and Choir. This version was used in the Oscar-winning film The Departed to great effect, of course. Comfortably Numb was the last song to be performed with the Pink Floyd nucleus of Waters, Gilmour, Wright, and Mason during a brief but thrilling Floyd reunion at the Live Aid concert in Hyde Park, London in July 2005. It was their first performance with the seminal lineup in 24 years.
Your lips move, but I can't hear what you say.
Now, like you, I'm sure that Comfortably Numb is a song that has saved you on a few occasions. It definitely has me. Speaking of summer 2005, I remember one day in the summer of that year, I woke up sick to my stomach. I'm barely able to move. The night before, I had received news that my divorce was final. A 7-year marriage over. After months of worry and heartbreak, insomnia, denial, pain, depression, finally acceptance, it all caught up with me on that dark morning. I felt like I had failed at what was supposed to be the most important institution of my life. I mean, I'd been taught since I was a young child that, you fall in love, you get married, and you live happily ever after, no matter what, forever. I wanted this marriage to work, and my now ex-wife, wanted to move on with her new interests, her new life. As I tried to will myself out of my bed, I was just overtaken by, like I said, this festering sickness. I could also hear a faint sound from underneath my pillow. It was actually my headphones from my iPod. I always listen to music while sleeping, I always have. The familiar chords of Comfortably Numb were playing. I mean, I put the headphones in my ears and I heard this song in a new way. The most haunting and beautiful lyrics that wholly resonated within this desperate soul of mine. When I was a child, I caught a fleeting glimpse out of the corner of my eye. I turned to look, but it was gone. I cannot put my finger on it now. The child is grown, the dream is gone. I have become comfortably numb. As those words penetrated my soul, I was just overcome with emotion and the levee broke. Everything I'd been holding in to be strong, to be okay, it just came pouring out and I just cried for about an hour. I needed to feel, to let it out in order to let it go. It's strange that the song that made me feel is called Comfortably Numb, but that's what Pink Floyd has always done so well. They have created music together that is not only timeless, it's been the answer to so many of our human frailties, the antidote to our biggest failures, as well as an escape from a desolate world. David Gilmour would say about this grand Floyd song, and I quote, "I think things like Comfortably Numb were the last embers of mine and Roger's ability to work collaboratively together. As Waters would say in the song, the dream is gone. But those embers of sonic magic are infinite." This is the first segment of breaking down Pink Floyd's legendary album, The Wall. More will surely follow, so make sure that you subscribe. Leave us a comment about this legendary band below. We're going to try to get some interviews as well. Tell us what this song means to you. What experiences do you have that are ties to this composition? If you like our content, we do invite you to be a permanent part of our community. Sub with us. Do that right now. We'd love to have you. Now, to get Pink Floyd's merch, to get this album, click on our Amazon links below, and make sure to check us out on Patreon. Help us keep the music alive. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.